Welcome to the Inferno Cast, everyone. We have Chris Burns here from Australia, going to be talking to us from down under. And part of the fun part will be his accent, because there's not one, which we'll get into that later. Chris, how's everything going, man?
It's going pretty good, man. How are you?
Man, I'm doing well. We're just trying to survive. It's a unique time. Things are a little bit weird and different right now, but we're making do. And I think the benefit that's coming out of it is just I'm getting to connect with a lot of old friends and make some new friends, which is kind of how
It's cool.
we got to meet each other through our mutual friend, Jack Toffer, who introduced us and who will actually be a part of this podcast in a weird and strange way, oddly observing from the side, but that's a whole other story.
Let's face it, I need a chaperone.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct. He was like, I got to make sure you do a good job. What I wanted to get into was, how did you find martial arts as a kid, and what did that look like for you when you discovered martial arts in general, or more specifically, jiu-jitsu?
Well, I found it kind of because my favorite band when I was a kid was Tool,
Yeah.
and I heard the singer did judo or something like that, and that was it. I was like, cool, man. If he does that, I want to try that. That sounds awesome. And I'm talking like really young, like
Like how
super
old?
young. Oh man, like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not kidding. I had some really interesting friends growing up, and they had older brothers that were into this kind of music. And for some reason, they showed the younger brother a CD case where you open it up, and I'm not gonna say it because it's just disgusting. But like, you open the CD case, if you pull up the back CD case, there's like a hidden photo, and they thought it was the coolest thing ever to show little kids. And I
Yeah.
was like, that's horrifying, and I love it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kind of got into the music really young by default. And over time, somebody told me about how the singer for it does judo or jujitsu. I had no idea what the difference was between the two of them, and that kind of sat in the back of my mind for a really long time. And I thought, one day I'm going to do that. One day I'm going to do that. But I was a teenager, so there was a lot more like cigarettes and alcohol than there was athletics.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Eventually, I kind of got healthy and thought, I'm gonna give it a go.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting really, really physically sick for a long time, and I couldn't
Really?
do anything. Yeah, I had parvo. So
Okay.
it's like arthritis of all the joints, but
Uh-huh.
it's what dogs get. Dogs get parvo, and when a
Mm.
human gets it, you can easily cure parvo. I think you like just take a pill and you're fine the next day. But if the doctors don't diagnose it within the first couple of weeks, it gets lost in the bloodstream. So
Right.
I got lost in the medical system for a couple of years, and they kept giving me the wrong stuff, and nobody knew what was wrong with me for years. And I figured, if I ever get back to normal, I'm gonna finally go and do that judo stuff.
So you
That
kind
that
of
was
had a time where, like, your ability to do athletics was kind of taken away from you, even though you
that
hadn't been
that
utilizing that much up to that point. It was just like, look, man, if you wanted to do it, you couldn't do it. Do you feel like that did you have the drive to really go train and get involved with it before, or do you feel like the drive developed because now that was off the table currently?
I'm pretty sure it developed because it was off the table. Like,
Yeah.
it was always there for me. I always wanted to strive to be better, but I was also really young and angsty and chain smoking. So you can't do any athletics and be a smoker. That's not an option. So I always figured like the first step would be, I don't know, quit smoking. So I kind of nailed that one while I was doing parvo.
Yeah.
And since I couldn't do it, I just made a promise to myself that one day, like, I will get better. I will get better. And when I do, I'm doing this. I'm totally doing it. And I did. I came out swinging. Like, the day that it happened, I went the next day to jujitsu because I didn't know any better. I
Yeah.
thought it starts with a J. So I showed up and they looked like they were wearing judo stuff. I was like, cool, I'm in. I joined the class, and I got beat up. It was terrible because I was almost 100 kilos because and I don't know what that is in pounds, but
Yeah, you've been over
basically,
there a little too long. So 100 kilos.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's a lot of pounds. Good to know.
that's a lot of pounds because I had like all this water weight because they gave me methotrexate because they thought it was some kind of cancer drug they gave me. So I was taking that and I swole up like a balloon. And the minute I stopped, they gave me the cure pill or whatever it was. And I felt good. I had no muscle and just tons of water weight. And I sweated out in like a week of doing jujitsu. So I walked in there at like 90 kilos, like no, like 98 or something. And I think I was down to 80 within like 2 weeks. Just sweat it right out. So it was awesome. That was honestly, that's how I ended up getting into it. That guy from Tool,
Yeah.
he did something, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna do that. And I showed up, and I thought I was doing judo for like a year.
Yeah.
No one told me anything.
They just told you to keep showing up. We're going to keep
Yeah,
choking you with this pajama thing. It doesn't matter what it's called. Just keep showing up.
it was awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. So, about what age was this?
Oh man, this was probably about 1920.
Okay. So you
So
get in.
I,
Go ahead.
oh yeah, no, I was very inactive in my youth. Like I did little stuff on the side. Like my friends did some wrestling in high school, and some collegiate boxing and things like that. So I did little things on the side, but never anything physical. So this was my first physical foray, and I didn't get into it until I was like 1920.
So, how long was it you were training before you started thinking like bigger picture, like, man, this might define who I am. This might redirect my life. This might take me down a different path. How long was it before you felt like that happened, or was that from inception where it was like day one, this is going to be who I am now?
No, not necessarily. Like that didn't happen for me. Uh, it didn't really hit me that this is going to define my life until probably around like purple belt, brown belt, and that was like 5 or 6 years into it. Excuse me. I actually kind of flew through the ranks. The white to blue was awful. It was years of just awful, not even funny, awful. And then at some point, I was like, I'm getting good at this, and I just lived in the academy, literally. I put up a hammock in the corner and I slept between classes. I did like 3 to 4 classes a day, and I was there 7 days a week. And I kind of just rose through the ranks doing that. But I didn't realize that it was a thing for me until probably around purple or brown, where it became my job and it became my passion to teach. Before that, it was just stubborn. Like if I start something and I'm bad at it, I don't stop until I'm the best I can be. So yeah, I'm working through issues with that.
So, so did you always have a tendency to like hyper focus on things? Is like that in your personality that like once you're on something, like you're on it and you don't deviate? Or do you feel like there was a part of the martial arts piece that kind of brought that out of you?
A little bit of both. The first thing is I was an artist and illustrator for my entire life. I was very interested in art, and I was a perfectionist with ink work. So line weight, so thick to thin line weight and all. I was very anal retentive with my work. And I think that's just carried on throughout my entire life. If I focus on something, I'm 100%. I don't waver whatsoever. It's going to happen or I die.
The hyper focus you kind of mentioned. It was like, you get into it. This is going to define you around purple or brown belt. You start looking at this like, it's a job. This is where the career is taking you. What were some of your influences in those lower ranks that kind of you were aspiring to be, or people you were looking up to? Like, was there anybody you were kind of following or kind of looking to for a little bit of a roadmap?
It's absolutely no one. Just everything was out of spite. Like, like, no, you won't stop me. No, I'm going. No, you can't stop. No, I've always had influences, but mostly it was spite.
Yeah,
A huge one for me for the longest time was Hickson.
yeah.
So I got into jujitsu without knowing what jujitsu was, and I got obsessed with jujitsu, still not knowing what jujitsu was, because I'm not bad mouthing, but I'm not a very big fan of the school that I kind of rose up in, because there was no explanation as to anything. It was just a fight club, and I mean that with love. Like I actually really liked it. They just kind of gave us gis and just said try not to punch him, and it was that was it. So
And a lot of
influence
schools are built
wise,
that way. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of schools, especially in the early days, like that's kind of, you know, where there was jujitsu, a lot of times there was a fight club, you know, like there was a lot of, you know, a lot of that mixing and matching of like Valley Tudo, MMA, jujitsu, you know, like so that was real common in those days. And a lot of people didn't know
Mhm.
any different.
Oh, yeah, no, it was really weird where I came up, and I'm saying this with love for where I came from. I'm not, bad mouthing it. It's gonna sound like I am because I am, but like I still loved it. I had a great time. Jiu-jitsu wasn't really jiu-jitsu. It was sport jiu-jitsu. There was no emphasis whatsoever on any kind of self-defense, and no one ever told you that whatsoever. I just showed up and they're like, "Get out of his guard." I'm like, "What's a guard?" "It's that. Get out of it." I'm like, Okay. Don't let him pass your guard." "What's a guard?" "Just don't let him get past you." "All right." And that went on for like a decade. there was there was no structure. There was no teaching of moves. It was like, this is a Kimura. Why would I do it? Because just be stronger. Do it. Like, all right, all right. It was terrible. It was awful. So influence wise, I had to kind of find my own instruction because I wasn't being instructed. It was a room full of people in jackets doing backyard wrestling, and they were just kind of going for it, and they were going into championships and winning, and they're doing really good. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm competing in. This makes no sense to me. So for the reason I stuck around though was because I started doing MMA the minute I got like vaguely fit. I think I was like at the end of white belt. I went off to another club and started doing MMA because they weren't punching at this school. And I'm thinking, I want to learn how to fight. If I'm going to be in pain all the time, might as well learn how to do something useful with it. So I went off to another club and did MMA while I was doing jujitsu at this other club. And the jujitsu at this other club was so bad, but I was still winning MMA fights with that crap jujitsu. So I was like, well, all right, fine. I guess I have to do jujitsu. Like that's the one that keeps winning over here because I'm getting flying crane kicks to the face and all this other stuff, and I'm still winning with a Kimura.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, I'm gonna keep going to jujitsu, even though I have no idea what they're teaching me. I'm still learning something. But I feel like I trailed off. What was the question?
Well, I mean, there's just your influences that you were kind of looking up to because,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you know, so if MMA become the influencer as well, I mean, was it more of an iconic piece within the MMA circles? It was like, oh man, Tito Ortiz out there beating people up. And I was like,
Oh
I get
Lord, no. It was definitely Hickson because at one point I was still like going to jujitsu club thinking like, well, jujitsu's beating the MMA class, and I'm doing really good in that class because of jujitsu. So stick with jujitsu and do MMA part time. And nobody at jujitsu was teaching me anything. And I said like, okay, how can I learn? Like, how do I learn this if nobody can actually teach me? Because at some point I was running classes. Like they had a guy who doesn't know anything running classes just because he's there. It's like, all right, fine. I have to start learning things. So I started watching instructionals and I get somebody to show me an instructional. Like, that's absurd. I'm not going upside down. That's craziness. And eventually somebody showed me choke. And that was it. That was it. I saw choke. Oh man. Like that guy's got it going on. That's what I want. And I started kind of looking in a little bit more to Vale Tudo and adding strikes in, and that geared me a little bit more towards the Gracie University, weirdly enough. And I ended up running a CTC for Henry and Hedon for a while as well. But it's not what I do. I'll talk about that later. But that version of jujitsu is what I was in love with. So my influence basically was choke. Like
yeah,
I'd sit around, I'd be watching uh like some early instructionals by like
Mario Sperry.
Cyborg. Oh god, yeah, with his little
That's
tights.
old school.
Yeah. That's a classic. Man, I've made it through countless instructionals. It's good to go through all that stuff and just throw it right out and realize that you don't need any of that stuff. And that was huge for me. So I think a giant influence for me was Hickson from the start, and I wasn't even under Hickson. I had
Yeah.
nothing to do with that lineage. I was so far away from that lineage, and I was thinking like, I'm in Australia. I have no option. I'll take what I can get for the rest of my life. And then now I'm here and it's awesome. I actually get to do stuff with the Hicks and lineage. So
So now, flipping to the Australia discussion, how did you end up on another continent?
um my family, my father ran like credit card companies, I think. I'm really bad understanding what people do like for a living. I still don't know what my dad does. I have a very close friend for like 20 years, no idea what he does for a living. Something to do with rocks. But it's he did something with credit cards and I got the offer to come over to Australia if I went to art school because I was an awful kid. I was terrible. I was getting in trouble all the time. And they gave me an option of like, okay, you can stay here and be homeless or you can come to Australia. It's like, I'll take Australia. So I flew over here with them, ended up going to art school, and I met my first wife. So I stuck around and I stayed with her for about 20 years. So that was the reason I stayed in Australia was because I was married to an Australian that
Well,
didn't
what
want to
age did
leave.
you come to Australia?
I came over when I was 16 or 17.
Okay, okay. So most of your youth and growing up and all the martial arts examples that you were dealing with in the schools, so this was all happening in Australia because that's basically where you've been most of your life.
Yeah, I've been here for like 25 years on and off. I lived in Sydney for a little bit before I moved over here at 16, 17. I think I went to Sydney at 11 to 13 for a couple of years and then went home for a while and then came back here, I think 16 or 17. I've been here ever since.
Yeah.
So all of my martial arts influences have been here in Australia. That's why I keep having to fly all over the world and bring people to me or go to them.
So how did you connect with the Hickson lineage? Like where was the transition where you were training, you're trying to get better, you're reaching out, you're trying to find information? What were you able to get a hold of that kind of got you on track?
Jason Robig. So Jason is a black belt under Hickson and Crone, and I think he's second degree. He's under Takamasa. Um, he uh, he runs a school in Queensland now, and he ended up coming out here to Melbourne to do like a seminar series at another school. Excuse me. And somebody got really excited one day. I can't remember who, but they're like, "Dude, there is a Hickson black belt here," and I was like, dropped everything. Like, yeah, awesome, because I'm like, Hickson's the man. That's what I want to do. So dropped everything and I ran to that seminar. And I like you should do an interview with Jason because I think he did a post uh with a picture of me and him saying like I've never met someone this excited for jujitsu because everything he showed was actual jujitsu. And that's huge for me. And I'm not gonna name drop anyone, but like all these seminars that I went to, like all these huge names, and they're all very talented in their own right. They're just showing like submission setups, guard passes, and just crap. Like it's that's not what jujitsu actually is. This guy came in and showed me how to do a hip escape, like an actual hip escape, one where I'm adding weight and making a connection to the person, and it blew my tiny mind. I was like, that's what this is actually supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be stronger or faster than this person. I'm supposed to do jujitsu. And finally, finally, here it is. And that was my first taste of actual Hickson because I was like, oh, what is that? And he was like, that's just Hickson. Like, what do you mean? It's just Hickson. He's like, that's just Hickson. That's not a move. That's just like you just there. And he just kind of put a little bit of weight on me. He's like, that's Hickson. Like, I need to know more. I don't understand any of this. And I've been obsessed ever since.
So after you went to this seminar and you found, this connection theory of, what Hickson's kind of producing and preaching and just, basically verifying everything you thought before, what did you do next? What was the next move? Was it get on a plane, go live in America for a while? Was it find a way to get the guys back in? I mean, what did it look like?
Well, I was doing that beforehand. The jujitsu out here was never geared towards the jujitsu that I was kind of in love with. So I was always bringing people to me. So like I was contacting people to begin with for a very long time. Excuse me. So I would manage to get out like Steve Maxwell and things like that. it got to the point where I was hunting for people to bring to me. I had to bring them out into Muhammad because I couldn't go to America because my first marriage kind of had me hunkered down. I couldn't leave. So I had to start dragging people to me so I could learn more because instructionals weren't really cutting it. So the next step after that was like, how do I get more Hickson? Because I couldn't really get out to Queensland and he wasn't really coming out here. So I'm looking up more and more like Hickson black belts and watching their videos and thinking like, all right, I'll do what every white belt in the world does and just watch YouTube. And like I figured like the huge thing about the way Hickson teaches, it's like a filter. It's like a plug-in adapter because you can still do the, you know, Americana, but the Americana is very different because of the weight distribution and just the angles and the leverage, which is kind of what it was supposed to be. But if you watch an instructional by some other guy and you take that move and you kind of do that plug-in adapter of like, okay, where's my weight supposed to be? Where's my base supposed to be? How am I supposed to, you know, it's not like a submission chain kind of thing. It's more about connection and weight distribution than anything. So it's a plug-in adapter. So I started watching Hickson black belts trying to teach this stuff and then kind of doing it myself and putting it together. And it just wasn't quite working for me, but it's better than nothing. So I started sending messages to them saying like, so feel like coming to Australia? Like, you want to come out? And then one day I saw a video of this guy teaching how to stop the sit up sweep from the guard. And he sat up. That was it. He just got up on his knees and the other guy just fell over. I was like, what? Like I can't swear enough for that one video. It's like, this is insanity. And the guy seems really cool and laid back. I'm gonna look him up. And I started looking up more videos and more videos and more videos. And I ended up sending a message to a guy named Jack Taufer. So you know Jack? And the minute I messaged him, he messaged back. And we were just messaging, like right out the gate, talking. And within like a week, I think we started telling more jokes than messages, and we became much like closer friends than just like asking questions. And then sooner or later, it was like, so you're coming out to Australia now, right? So yeah, and then I organized to have him brought out here, and yeah, it's never stopped. I've spent a lot of time with Jack. So I am under Jason. I've been under Jason for years now, but like I'm kind of under Jack too. You know, like it's just a weird lineage thing because Jack teaches me so much. So like I'm obsessed with the self-defense side of things, and I'm obsessed with the base and weight distribution and the timing and body wiring things. Like between Jason and Jack, I almost kind of feel like I'm a blue belt. So between those two guys, something's gonna happen eventually.
Yeah. Well, so what does it look like on the schooling? Like, when did you decide, like, hey, I need to start an academy, or like I need to start my own structure, my own process? Did that happen? What happened with that situation? As far as like what you're passing
Okay, so I started teaching as a white belt straight up. Like I was in the academy all the time and I seemed to know what I was doing even though I didn't. So the guy who ran the academy I was at had me running classes from the start. So I got thrown in the deep end with teaching until it became like that's just what I do. Like I'm the guy that's always there and I can fix your problem. I'll run a school for you. I'll run a class for you. And he ended up making a affiliate school down the street, and he was like, "Go teach there, make me some more money." So I'm running his classes at his academy. He's like, "Go run another academy." I was like, all right, cool. At least I get paid there. So I went off to a Krav Maga school and started teaching jiu-jitsu there. And there's stories on that one. So because oh dude, I ended up teaching and starting my own school because I got so just not just frustrated, like infuriated by the fact that no one would just do jujitsu at all. They always had these weird side schemes. It's like, we're doing jujitsu, but we're building this with it. Like, why don't you just build jujitsu? I mean, you've got a whole group of guys over there that want to learn jujitsu, and you're not giving them any focus or attention. You're not giving them any mat space or any mat time. You're just running this place doing something completely different. And I had a falling out with the last school that I was teaching at. And I ended up just going, all right, done. I'm just gonna go rent my own space. Because excuse me. The best influence I ever had with that was Dave Kama. Because I went out to LA to go and train with Jack. And specifically, we went out to go and train at Crohn's. And I spent a lot more time with Henry Akins and Jack Taufer while I was there. I was just going out to Crohn's to roll because Crone was off doing his own thing. And I ended up spending a lot of time with the Dave Kama crew. And they are the coolest guys. It's just so nice and laid back. And like other schools that I was going to were like fairly intense and like they're out for blood. I'm like, cool, everyone's out for blood in Australia. Everyone's trying to murder me there. I'm fine. Out if I come out here, it'd be really nice to just learn something. Hanging out with Kama and them. He just rolled out some mats on a porch. That was it. That's all it took. And I was like, where's your school? And he's like, here. this is before the Austin Academy and stuff was up and running. And I was thinking that is the single coolest thing I think I've ever seen. This is Dave Kama. Like, he's fairly well known, high up in the ranks, and he just rolled a mat out and taught me a fireman's carry and how to escape back control properly. I was like, that's all you need, man. You need a deck and some mats and love of jiu-jitsu. And I took that was the huge thing I took home with me on that trip. Like I learned a whole bunch of cool stuff, but like if you love something, you're gonna do it. So I went home and I rented a space and we put down mats. That was it. It was as hard as it had to be. I didn't have to work for anybody else. So I've been running it ever since.
So what kind of structure did you set up for your students? You know, like what's it look like being a student at your academy as far as like what do you feel like they need to be seeing and hearing, and like what is the environment and the culture built around that you want it to stand for?
Oh, dude, I'm like the worst guy to ask that. I am I am genuinely trying to be a better and more professional instructor. So a huge thing for me is like I ran a fight club for a long time with absolutely no rules, and it was just swearing and belittling constantly. Like I got a black belt in like hanging shit on people before I ever got a black belt. You just sit on the wall and you make fun of your friends, and that's what I was raised doing. And eventually I ended up going to school. I went to the instructor certification thing for Henry and Hedon for Gracie University. And that was huge. Learning how to teach jujitsu, I had no idea that was a thing. I thought you just showed a move and you sent them on your way. It was very eye-opening to learn from the actual Gracie family how to teach jujitsu. And it became a goal of mine to run the classes in a structure. So I ran a certified training center for Henry and Hedon under Gracie University for about 3 years. And the way it was taught was fantastic. Like the way we ran classes and how like little things about, well, try not to make fun of the student. not every student wants to be made fun of. You know, like try not to yell at them when they do things wrong. You know, just little things that normal people would know that I didn't. I abided by.
It's like
And
that. It's like that percentage of the population that there's people that respond to certain things. You know, like I came up real old school martial arts where it's like, man, you're beat down and you're built up. But that's a small segment of the population, which, you know, you were probably part of, that was like telling you no and taking it away from you, especially at that young age. That's where you found your drive. You know, a lot of people are just motivated for a minute. You found your drive. And so, you know, you just basically repeated what worked for you. It was like, man, I've become very successful and this has changed my life for the better by going through these steps. But then nobody tells us that only works for a percentage of the population.
I had no idea. That made no sense to me. Like, I figure if you're doing jujitsu, you're willing to hurt. You know, like if you walked onto that mat, you're willing to be in pain for the next week to learn something. That's not a that's not a thing. You know, there's some people out there that kind of just wanted to do some exercise, you know, and there's some people that wanted to learn how to defend themselves. And that's a huge one. Is that maybe they came to you under duress, you know? Maybe they got picked on. Maybe they've been yelled at and belittled and put down all the time. They don't need me doing that. You know, like I'm happy with like the military, like just berating that I took. I responded well to it. And a lot of my guys that are in like the ballet tudo class, I have a specific class where I will just yell at you. And they respond really well. But when I do the fundamentals class, I'm a completely different person. I try and be as nice and as laid back as possible and make it as welcoming as possible for everyone because those are the people that really need jujitsu. Like the Vale Tudo guys, whatever, they'll grab a stick and hit you with it. Like they're just violent. Like that's a different breed. But like the people that really need jujitsu actually need you to not be a dick to them as well. So
Do you
that's
think
what
maybe do you think that maybe there's people out there that like they've got something great in them or this potential that maybe's covered up with all the BS from their life, of the insecurities and the confidence problem that stopped them from walking into a school or an academy?
yes. Like everyone, every single person has potential. There's not one person that walks in the door and like it's hopeless. No, not in the least. Like you're there because you want to do something, you want to become a better person. And like if anything, let me help you in any way I can. Any way I can. Like I really don't think it should just be a fight club for tough people. I think the idea of you coming in there and becoming a better person through jujitsu, man, if I can help you with that in any way, I'm totally down, you know? And I think that's possible for literally every person that walks on the mat. Like there's not one person excluded on that one.
Do you think that there's like this power or this ability that comes with jujitsu that bleeds into the rest of their life? And what do you think what do you think that energy or that power actually is that improves everything else around them?
Uh, The first thing for me was problem solving and not being aggravated all the time, because like I would get really upset with something and I just kind of like, done. I don't care. And just kind of leave it. Eventually, through time and through doing jujitsu, I kind of found that like if you just persist and you keep showing up, eventually the problem has a solution, and it builds this, I don't know, ability to deal with stress. Like even like the worst case scenario can and will get better. Like that's a beautiful outlook on life. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how terrible the party is that you're at, there's always going to be a couch and a dog. You know, you can always kind of hang out with the dog on the couch, and the party's not quite as bad. So that was a great thing for me to take away, and I see a lot of students take that away. Like some of them will come in really stressed, and like by the end of the class, like it's not that bad. At least I don't have that guy's elbow in my eye socket right now. Like life could be worse. But like a huge thing that I've noticed over the years is it's not just determination and growth that you get, but it's like this sense of balance. Like it's you can kind of find a comfortable place in life because of this. Like not only physically, but emotionally and mentally, it kind of keeps you on path and gives you a goal and helps you relax and it gets the stress out. It keeps you in like the middle and it keeps balance for you. So I've watched a lot of students come in with heavy issues, like physical or mental, and they've kind of grown as a person. Not like in a hippie way, but like, they're not quite as bad as they were last year. And they're definitely not as bad as they were 6 years ago. So it's got to be doing something right.
How is how has witnessing this in other people affected you as a leader and a coach as far as like who you used to be like when you started this journey versus kind of who you are now?
Wow, that's a big one. I don't necessarily, I never really saw myself as a leader and a coach until, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago. I had somebody telling me that I was the leader and I was the coach. And that's like a heavy burden to carry because maybe I should get my shit together. Maybe I should start acting like a leader and a coach. And then, fake it till you make it. But, yeah, for me, being a leader and a coach, it's a privilege. It passed the idea of being stressful a long time ago, and it more became like this person doesn't necessarily need your approval, but they're requesting it. Help them. Do what you can to not be a dick. That's if I have one thing I've ever learned from jujitsu is like just don't be a dick. Find a way to stop being such a dick. I
Yeah.
think that's the best thing I've ever taken away from martial arts in general. Try and be cool. Try and help everyone that you can in any way you
Do you
can.
think that you started seeing different patterns of how people receive, that encouragement or that interaction, like, because some people, you got to push, some people you got to pull. Like, are you really starting to figure out these different vibes that people have that you got to
Dude,
navigate to get the best out of them?
dude, it becomes second nature because I've been doing this for like oh Christ, I don't even know how long. Like closing on like uh, you can tell from across the room with people eventually. Like if you get good at it, you can see like that person needs a hug. Like that one just needs a smack in the head. Yeah, like maybe some kind words for that one. But when you're on the mats, you can see who's really shy, who's really timid, and who needs it. You're doing really good. Even though you're god awful, you are the worst possible person on this mat right now. You're doing great because you're here. It's like I'll make sure that I'll walk over them and be like, "Hey, that was really good, really good," and they'll look at me like, "What? I'm doing it," and you can see them light up. And like, "Yep, that's the one that you keep patting on the back."
Yeah.
And then you got the guy who's like really angry that he's not getting anything right. And you go over there and you be a little bit more firm with him, like, no, 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 put your hand here, a little bit heavy. Yeah, yes, all right, there you go, nice. And then they look.
Yeah.
It's weird. You can really get a feel for it over time.
Yeah. Well, that's really awesome that that you see that as a coach and a leader, that the influence has to be in different ways, which I think goes back to like what you were saying of the essence of jujitsu, where like it's so broad, and there's so many iterations of it, but at its core, there's some principles and ideas. So when you look at jujitsu at its core, when you're like, man, what is the principal idea of Brazilian jiu-jitsu that you're trying to teach students on the mat, versus what we're talking about off the mat? What do you kind of feel like you're trying to teach them on the mat? What is the big idea?
Mm. Well, the main thing that I always come back to is finding the middle and just being patient. Like, oh, well, I don't know, man. There's a lot to that. But the big thing that the students tend to walk away from, walk away, they just give up on me, walk away with, is finding the middle and finding a way to relax. Because that's huge. Like, that's giant. When you start, you're like super, super stressed and rigid and just trying so hard to win. Eventually, just finding a way to relax in the middle of this hurricane and not being stressed is the huge thing that they finally walk away with. Like I'll get messages from students like every month or two. I'll get a message going like, I had no idea that jujitsu wasn't just moves, and it's awesome, and that makes my day to get a message going like it's just about finding a comfortable space and then taking what they leave behind. You don't have to force anything. You just have to be patient and well, like it's kind of counterintuitive, but like just you have to become hell. Like that person doesn't want to be with you. You could be on the top of the bottom, but they should be so annoyed fighting you. They should be so annoyed that you even exist that they're going to screw up. So
Right.
when a student sends me a message about something like that, I feel like I've done my job. You know, it's less about a 30-step heel hook escape. And it's more about just find your weight distribution and be a dick. Just kind of hang out and be heavy.
Yeah, making it difficult, being the resistance that holds them back, and just like you said, they always leave something behind. And there's
Yeah.
something else you mentioned that um, the definition of winning at a white belt or when you're newer versus the definition of winning later. What's the difference?
As a white belt, winning, like, it's gonna sound really cliche, but like just showing up, that's a win, man.
What,
Because like when I
like,
was a white belt,
I meant more of their perceived idea of winning. Like when you're a white belt and
oh,
when you're new, what you think winning looks like versus what winning really looks like as you get into it.
the
Does that make
tap.
more sense?
Yeah, a white belt. If that white belt taps out anyone, they are a god. I've seen guys like walk in and they get their first ever submission, and they are on cloud nine for the rest of the week. They're walking around with their chest out, like, yeah, that's right. Like, all right, cool. You did really good beating up that girl half of your size. Good stuff. It was a submission and it counts. But then like that's the big thing at white belt is they love to get the submission. So as it progresses, I think a lot of my students is they don't get punched as much because I don't do sport jiu-jitsu. Like they're gonna put on gloves and they're gonna get popped in the nose until they realize getting popped in the nose is not fun. And all of a sudden they're keeping their distance either managed or very far away, and they're getting actual jiu-jitsu down. They're not just going for cool submission. So that middle ground of happiness is not freaking out when someone tries to touch your face and not flinching and like I've seen guys go like, oh, and get really relaxed into it. And I saw one of them smiling when another guy was trying to punch him. He had his elbow and his knee together. He's like, oh no. It's like this serene calm. And then I think the huge gratification for a lot of higher belts that I have is realizing that jiu-jitsu is not just fighting. It's not just brawling until you're sweaty and bloody and feeling tough. It's it's understanding what jiu-jitsu is and what it is underneath all the cool moves that you can learn. You know, just finding your base, making connection and adding weight and just using somebody against somebody else. It's not about the move. It's more about what it is underneath that move that makes it work. You know, these tiny, tiny little details that you had no idea about, like turn your heel to the ceiling and dig your toes in. Like, why? Because this. Oh, and you'll have like a brown belt that's been training for over a decade. Look at you like you're a wizard. Like it's not me, it's Dixon. Don't look at me. So
So,
different levels of gratification.
and I think that that's a really relevant topic because a lot of people what they think they are going to expect when they start jujitsu, or like what you perceive as the victories, what you think it's supposed to be early on in your career versus later when you kind of you get a little more wisdom and you figure it out better. And I think there's a lot of disparity in that. So as a coach, your job is trying to shorten that learning curve. Do you think there's a way for you to shorten that for people when they start, or do you think it's a rite of passage? It's like, man, you got to ride that train till one day you figure it out.
Yeah, well, like I'm not a big fan of the got my black belt in 4 years crap. Like, first of all, I know a lot of those guys and they didn't get it in 4 years. It's just 4 years on paper. It's bullshit. Like jujitsu, it's much more similar to the idea of surfing. And I love like the concept like jujitsu and surfing, and people love to surf and do jujitsu. It's like two beautiful things, and blah blah blah. But it literally is. Like everyone can stand on a piece of wood. Like everyone. Like eventually you can stand up. But can you kind of move with that as it's moving? That's a felt thing. And some people will get it faster than others, you know? For my students, I want to give them the most efficient principles, period. I'm not going to show you like a 20-step move. I'm going to show you if he does this, you can do this. It takes 2 steps. If a move has 2 steps, that's 2 ways that person can counter it. If a move has 12 steps, that's 12 ways of you screwing up. So do the 2-step. And like when you're good at doing that, I'll show you the 12-step move. You know, if you can handle the 2-step move, I'll build it up and I'll show you something fancy, but you don't need it. You do not need it. Like I spar with UFC guys, world champions, and like I'm not using anything. I'm as dumb as a block of wood when it comes to all these chain submissions. No, just it's as simple as this. You don't have to struggle with it. So that's what I want my students to walk away with right away. The more you do, the more you can screw up. The less you do, and the more you just kind of ride that wave nice and gentle, the better off you're going to be all the way to black belt. Also, don't do tornado guard. For the love of God, just don't do things that are going to slip your discs in your back because you want to win something. Self-preservation, I think, is the very first thing that I try and talk into my students the first day. Like, if you're going to fall, tuck your chin.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
It's the longevity discussion. It's like, man, you want to be an athlete for as long as possible, and you just want to be healthy as long as possible. So
Yeah.
you mentioned, the belts and black belts. So what was your, growth into black belt like? When you got awarded your black belt, what was, you had a unique background anyway, kind of coming to the ranks. So what did that all kind of come to a culmination like?
Ah, dude, my black belt story is weird. I remember telling Hiron about this. We were at dinner and we were talking about it. He's like, "Okay, so where'd you get your black belt?" And I was like, I told him the story. And he was like, "Don't worry, dude. You're not the only one. Like, there's a lot of people out there that get their belts through like weird lineages and like bits and pieces." Like I was talking to Howder in the change room. He's like, "I gotta get another stripe." I was like, "Where are you gonna get it?" I was like, "I don't know. One of these guys." He's just looking around at all these other guys. Like, someone's gonna give me a stripe. it's it's not that big a deal once you get the black belt. You had no idea how little it mattered. Like it doesn't really matter that much. But from white to brown, it's like you can't be a crayonche. I was in a school with the whole crayonche thing, and it was terrible because every student there was training somewhere else to learn things and then just coming there to fight. God, that was annoying because they were coming in, they were really good and they're getting better than me. I'm like, where'd you learn that? He's like, just silence, like nowhere. I didn't go somewhere else this weekend and learn things. So my black belt was weird. I got from white to brown under one lineage, and I was like one of the main instructors at that school. So I was teaching these guys, and like there are some genuinely talented people in that school. Like I cannot shit on that school. They are very, very good, but they're also very good because they were training other places. So white to brown in that school, and then I ended up kind of sort of being fired from being the teacher. It was really weird, and it's way too long to explain. So I went off and I started wearing my white belt for a very long time because I figured I don't have a school that I represent. I don't have a teacher. I don't have anything. I'm just going to wear a white belt and I'm just going to do jiu-jitsu every day in white belt for the rest of my life. Fine, whatever. And that was fine until a fairly well-known guy was here for a seminar series, and he was complaining about me wearing a white belt because he was going to get a photo with me. He's like, "No, dude, you're not a white belt. When are you going to put on a black belt?" I was like, "I don't have anyone to give me a black belt." And one of my black belt students, literally, I had black belt students at the time, took off his black belt and gave me his black belt. I was like, "Now you do." And I was like, "Did I just accidentally get my black belt?" Because like he just put it on me like it was like that's it. There's your black belt. This is how you've been awarded your black belt. I was like, "Oh, well, that's happened." So I got my black belt from one of my black belt students. And that sounds like some kind of shit you'd hear on like a YouTube. They're going to find this guy because he's a fake black belt, like handing out black belts from another black belt. Yeah, no, you can try and come and take it from me if you want. he awarded me my black belt because nobody else was there to hand it to me. So,
Yeah.
and he's still one of my students to this day. He's a very good man. But going under Jason, I kind of work towards re-earning my black belt, and like not gonna say that the black belt that I was given is not an actual black belt. I wanted to re-earn my black belt under a lineage. So I talked to Jason about that, and he was like, "Well, you can always go back down to brown, and I'll give you your black belt." And I was like, "That's a great idea, you know, but one, I'm running a school. Like I was actually running a certified training center for Henry and Hedon at the time. So demoting myself to brown belt under a different lineage while I'm teaching under another lineage is it's very complicated. Also, it's almost an insult to the guy who gave me the black belt, and I don't want to insult him because he's amazing. He's like the coolest guy. He's so dedicated to jiu-jitsu, and I love him to death. So I well, actually, Jason got on to Hickson and said, should we give him a black belt with a white stripe in it, like we do at Crohn's and commas and stuff, like kind of like a probationary black belt? And Hickson's like, just let him wear his black belt. Hickson, you're like, no, just shut up. So it's
Well,
like, fine, I'll just wear my black belt. And then sooner or later, Jason awarded me my self-defense stripes because the belt system is completely different on every side. With the black belt under Hickson, the white bars is not instructor bars so much as you're qualified to teach the self-defense curriculum. So I kind of figured that was like, all right, that's half a black belt. That's kind of cool. So I kind of sort of got that black belt, and I kind of sort of got that black belt. And then after the 3-year mark for my first stripe, Jason gave a lovely speech about how anal retentive I am about Hickson's self-defense. He was like, "You definitely earned this. This is my way of making you black belt." And I was like, "Multiple black belts, yeah." So yeah, it was like the weirdest lineage of trying to get to black belt ever. So now every time I go anywhere that has like the Hickson logo, I am literally trying to re-earn another version of that black belt. When I train at Crohn's, all the guys there are like, you can wear your black belt. Like you're under the lineage. You're allowed to wear your black belt. I was like, no, I want Crohn to tell me to put it on.
yeah.
I go there and I wear the black belt with the white bar, and I go and I roll with these guys. And I'm waiting for the day for Crohn to say like, no, you can wear your black belt. And I'm like, sure, black belt number 4. Just put it on.
Well, I mean, there's so many different influences on rank that sometimes like it's originally the communal acceptance of your level of performance within your peer group, and the people that matter in your life. And then somewhere along the way, it turned into a checkbox system and, almost kind of got DMV'd a little bit that people adhere to because, you're trying to follow the rules, like you're trying to do it the right way. And when you have limited resources, things get sideways and they get crooked. And just like that, you got put in unusual circumstance where checking the boxes got out of alignment of kind of the overall thought process that it was really supposed to mean. And I think that it speaks a lot to your character that you accepted that from a student, a friend, and a peer that was in a position to do that, because it was like that was the peer group, that was the tribal acceptance, that it meant something. But then you were humble enough to spend the time to keep checking the boxes, to be like, no, I still want to go through this process with these other people that are new to my journey, to kind of basically pay your dues with them as well. So that way, they looked at you as kind of, within the family versus, well, I mean, you were already there, so I guess we'll let it go. You wanted to earn your keep, but that's the forever student attitude, because tomorrow you could be told, hey man, you need to go put on your white belt again. And you probably wouldn't blink an eye, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, no, that's yeah. Well, that just made me sound way nicer than I am. That was really sweet of you.
Yeah.
It's
Well, but that's like, from the outside, just being in the industry all these years, like, having experience. And I've got a lot of friends and a lot of people that they've been there where just the circumstances got weird and messed up. All they want to do is do jujitsu, like, and that was
yeah,
it.
dude, I
So
never did it for the belt. I honestly, and this is not a lie, could not tie my belt properly until I think around black belt. It's not a joke. Like it sounds funny, but Where I started training, no one cared. You tied it on so that the gi wouldn't fall off, and if it fell off, you're fighting no gi. Who cares?
Yeah.
So it was a fight club, and I loved it. And I still have, well, no, I yell at them now, but I had a student that was training with me the entire time that was a higher rank than me from the start. And he tied his wrong, like he was like hanging like a white belt had tied it. It was a brown belt. I'm like, dude, come on, just try a little harder.
Your standard's
I
been
started,
raising over the years.
oh God, it's like the last thing I learned was how to tie the belt when it should have been the first. It's like I did everything backwards. The last stuff I focused on the most was the self-defense, the how to tie your belt, how to be presentable. I did everything from back to front. So
A lot of times they
yeah,
say that makes, the best instructors and leaders because you empathize with the struggle of new students and, and not fitting in or just doing things differently and wrong, to where a lot of times they say that gives you a lot more impact as a coach, because it didn't come easy. I mean, how many times have you been around somebody that was just phenomenal athlete and they struggle teaching and conveying ideas because they just do.
yeah, you got no idea. Like those are the guys that I trained with the most. Like full on world traveling fancy champion guys that could not show you how to tie their shoes. Like
Yeah,
they would just walk in like a wrecking crew and just ruin everybody. And like, how'd you do that? I was like, oh,
just did.
just did it. Like that's awesome, and I hate you because I had to struggle so hard just to get out of bed this morning. Oh, it's awful.
So what have you learned now that you've opened the gym? You're an entrepreneur. How's that been for your life?
Owning a gym is horrifying. That's how that's been, especially during the whole outbreak monkey thing. That's actually the coolest thing that I learned is that I built a community. I didn't build a club. Like I'm really really proud. Like when everything started falling apart and people started freaking out, the first thing I did was I stopped the academy. This is before they told us to stop. I was like, that's the responsible thing to do. And like it or not, you're a leader and they're going to follow. They might get a little upset, but you shouldn't have a room full of people doing the coughing joke kind of thing. Like, dude, you just don't do that. It's not safe. And like everyone's got to do their part to try and make this better. And I did it, and there was a couple of people that are like, dude, come on, we just want to roll. No one said we can't. I'm like, I said you can't. You can use the room if you want to use the room. It's your decision. You're an adult. And that went well because like everybody started being cool and they went in there and did their own thing. And none of them dropped off. I had like two people send a message saying like, well, the world's coming to an end. I need to save some money. And I'm like, fair enough, dude. All good. And the big thing for me was the fact that all these people stayed. In fact, I had people call me up that were already gone and off the system because they had other things on in their life for a while and we're coming back to training eventually. They called me up and sent me a message and be like, dude, put me back on. Like, I don't want 0 Point to fail while this is happening. And that blew my mind. And I've had people that are not even part of the club that kind of follow on Facebook and stuff that have offered to just throw money at the club.
Kind of
It's
help support.
un- oh, dude, it's unbelievable the community that's been built by default. Like I ever meant to do that. I meant to show you how to hurt people.
Yeah.
That's it. I was showing up like I really like hurting people, so I'm gonna show you how to do it with me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there's all these people that are sending each other messages, and there's a closed group where they're all communicating and they're filming really funny videos, like just trying to cheer each other up. And I don't know. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, that's what made it worth it.
So,
Like all those.
well, you kind of mentioned, earlier you talked about, aligning yourself with the right people, because like now you've found your tribe that you're kind of creating and influencing. And so have you had to realign yourself like in the business world as an entrepreneur, like surrounding yourself with people that are, doing a good job, or like have you had to treat your business journey a lot like your jiu-jitsu journey?
Completely, yes. And I'm very, very lucky that I've been led in specific directions. It was kind of like watching Choke, you know. So I didn't know what my direction was going to be. I didn't know where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do it, you know. And over time, I found the right path by default. With jujitsu, I found how to run my academy by default by doing the CTC. Like I love the way that they run that. I love the structure of the syllabus. I love like everything about that. But I hate the curriculum. I don't like what they teach. So that was the first goal. It's like I'm going to completely rewrite the curriculum, but I'm going to run it like this. And then I was really unbelievably lucky that Jack put me on to a guy named Eddie Fivey. And Eddie Fivey and us, like my business partner in this, his name's Greg Parker. Him and me have been working with Eddie on building the club right when this happened, right when everything kind of fell apart. And what's amazing is watching how Eddie has kept everything afloat himself during all of this. It's so cool to see that. Like he cares the same way that I care about jujitsu. It's not just a business for him, and it's definitely not just a platform to grab money. He cares, and he's made a great structure on how he's going to show jujitsu and how he's going to keep students and how and how and how. And I've been doing really good conference calls with him about how to run my academy. And the weird, really weird full circle thing, Eddie is the coach for the guy from Tool, which is really weird. With the chances of that. I know. With like, because I like Tool, like I always liked them, but like you hit like 20 years old and you don't have like a favorite band anymore. It's like, yeah, that's that band. You know, like all of a sudden his ass comes right back into my life. Like, yeah. So hanging out with Henry Akins and Eddie Fivey, and they're like, oh, Maynard's really cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm never gonna talk to him.
Yeah.
Never gonna meet him. Like it's just too weird. I don't want to talk to that guy. That's way too weird to go full circle on that.
Yeah. So, you know, you talk about jujitsu being like this balance thing, you know, where it's like it's all about being in the middle, and then like here you are, started because this band guy was starting to do jujitsu, and then now you're doing jujitsu, and you know you're working with his coaches, and or we're kind of in his lineage, you know, in the circle. So it's almost kind of like you're living the example of that balance of middle ground. How just things come full circle. It's ironic.
Yeah. Like something about that guy resonated with me when I was really young. And the fact that I've come around all the way to this makes it resonate even more. So I refuse to ever teach him or meet him.
Yeah.
I want nothing to do with it, because if I meet him and he's a dick, I'm done. I quit.
Yeah.
I said, I'm done.
Quit and retire. It's over. It's over. I'm living a lie.
Yeah,
So I'm supposed to ask
a
you.
lie.
I'm supposed to ask you to talk about Greg.
Okay. All right. Greg Parker was this goes back to that other school that I taught at. So when I was teaching at that school, they had a ton of students that would go other places to learn and dare to roll. And a lot of the students there did private lessons with me, the higher ranks. And I'm not upnoting myself whatsoever. I'm just anal retentive with technique. Like if you want to learn something, come ask me. I'm going to show you every single step, and I'll explain every step why. It's not just like, here's the move, just break the arm. So I got a lot of private lessons from a lot of higher ranks coming up. Like I was teaching black belts when I was a purple belt, but it was always it was a secret. You know, like I was teaching footlocks to a black belt back in the day before footlocks were cool. This guy named Greg Parker started doing jujitsu. And from what I understand, like this was maybe his first school, but like somebody told him, you should do privates with this guy named Bones. Like he's over at Brett McCallan's gym and he teaches privates out of there. So he started coming over and doing private lessons with me and rolling over at the other place. So he'd go over there and he'd fight and he'd screw everything up and he'd hurt himself and he'd come back to me. I was like, well, stop doing that. Do this. And he'd go over there, he'd hurt himself, he'd come back to me. And eventually, like, he kind of fell more in line in the direction I was going by default. Like he just one day was like, oh, cool, jujitsu. And he ended up going like, I'm gonna go and train Crohn's. Like, do you want to come with me? I was like, what do you mean, come with you? Like, he's like, I want to take you to LA and I want you to go to me like an interpreter. And I was like, done. So I got on the plane, went over there with him, and ever since then, he's been 100% down with the Hickson lineage of jiu-jitsu and the way that we're doing things. So the direction that we're going with Henry Akins, with Eddie Fivey, with Jack, Jason, like they're all in the same like offshoot of what we're aiming for. And Greg noticed that from a mile away. And Greg's a very smart gentleman. So he was like, tell you what, when you're done over at that other Krav Maga school that like doesn't treat you the way you deserve, I'm right here. So he was like the cool chick on the side looking at me like, why are you with her? Be with me. So I remember having like a business meeting where he kind of walked in. He's like, all right, you should do this. I got to go. And just walked out. And the other guys I was with, like, he doesn't care. He didn't stay. I was like, no, he's a businessman who just did his business and went off to do more business. God damn it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the guy I should be working with. So I dumped that girl and I'm with the hot chick named Greg. Greg's been a private student of mine for years and years and years. And he ended up being my partner. So now we're partners in 0 Points. So we're going to be getting a larger facility eventually. Who knows what's happening right now with all this? But yeah, he travels the world with me and gets punched in the face a lot. He's a good guy. I like him.
It's cool to see you kind of like finding your path that's aligning with what you kind of always were looking for. I think that people are going to be really encouraged with that, and I think that they're going to be able to take a lot from this of just kind of, staying true to who they are and kind of finding, the path in life that they want to follow and just staying on it and just, not letting up and just being relentless towards it. That's really what I feel like I heard out of it today. It was just, that relentless pursuit that, you'll never gain perfection, but you are after it as if it's right there at your fingertips. So I think that's really inspiring and people are going to really appreciate that.
It's cool, man. Like, thank you for making me sound nice. Like that was really nice of me. Like, I'm not used to that. I'm used to Jack. So
Yeah,
no,
we all are. We all are. Yeah, cool. Well, I appreciate the time, and we'll definitely be staying in touch, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate this.